Now, what I want to focus on in the remainder of the time we have together, I want to focus on step number 2, which is winning. Winning the person to Christ. I'll give some help on really step number 3 and step number 4, which is getting them in church where they can be baptized. But I want to focus, if you'll allow me to, on that second step. We're going, and now my desire is to win. And again, I want to say this because it helps us to put it into context. This is exactly what happens in Operation Go as the soul winning director begins to bring the training in that's necessary, and as a person goes out on the field and watches a soul winner in action, we are learning how to do exactly what Jesus told us to do in the Word of God, and that's win people to Christ. Now, in this winning of souls to Christ, I already told you a moment ago, let's review it, that we have how many steps? Do you remember? 13 steps. And we've taken these 13 steps and put them into 4 divisions. Division number 1, division number 2, number 3, and number 4. And then I'm going to give you on the side to write down some golden keys. And I call those sometimes the character of the soul winner in order to win people to Christ. So let's jump right to Roman numeral number 1, division number 1. Here it is, title. Write it in. Division number 1, Roman numeral number 1, cast the net right. C-A-S-T, cast the net right. Jesus told his disciples, he said, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. So we're going to use the language of fishing. Cast the net right. Now, what do I mean by cast the net right? What am I dealing with? I'm talking about if you've had any sales training, sooner or later somebody's going to say, here's how to get on the subject. Here's the way you need to get on the subject. That's what I mean. Have you ever walked up and wanted to witness to somebody? And you didn't know, what do I say? So you walk up and say, you saved? That's better than nothing, but not a whole lot. I've seen people walk up and say, hey, the Bible says, and they hold a Bible up, big Bible up. The Bible says if you don't get saved, you're going to hell. That's better than nothing. But I'm afraid it's really not going to get very many people saved. How do we get on this subject? You see, none offensive. Not that we're trying to say we don't want to be offensive, but there's no need to be offensive. We ought to be doing what we can to win people to Christ. Not trying to run people off, not trying to be offensive to people. We need to be nice as soul winners. Now, how do you get on the subject? Step number 1, 2, and 3 is under division number 1. So division number 1, say it aloud with me, have it written down. Division number 1, cast the net right. Now I'm going to give you those first 3 steps. And I'm going to give them to you so you can write them down one after the other. You can use ditto marks as you make notes if you'd like to. And by using those, you'll find the similarity in the first 3 steps. All 3 of the first 3 steps, all of them are questions. The best way to get anybody involved with you in any presentation is to ask questions. To ask questions. And so it is here, to ask questions. All right, here we go. 13 steps, 4 division. Division number 1, cast the net right. Now, step number 1. What is your church background? W-H-A-T. What is your church background? Question mark. Write it down. What church were you raised in? See how non-offensive that is? What is your church background? Question number 2. If you should die right now, do you know for sure that you go to heaven? If you should die right now, do you know for sure that you go to heaven? Now go back after step number 1 and put a dash after it, because that sets you up for that second question. Are you ready for it? Step number 1, what is your church background? Question mark, dash, give your testimony. Do you see the importance there of saying, I'm going to give my testimony as soon as, what church were you raised in? Well, I was raised in a Methodist church. You say something positive and you give your testimony. And then at the end of your testimony, you see how normal it is for step number 2. If you should die right now, do you know for sure you go to heaven? And we'll talk in a minute about how to respond to what happens there. And then step number 3, very simply is this. Could I take just a moment to show you how you can know for sure you're going to heaven? When you go into that home, your hands ought to be empty. You got a pen in your pocket. You got your cards right here to make notes on. You got your soul winner New Testament in your pocket. And so you're not trying to go in and scare the person to death. And it's sort of like this. You go in and say, listen, what is your church background? And they'll mention something. And you say a positive statement. You give your testimony. And then step number 2, You look at them very simply and say, if you should die right now, do you know for sure you go to heaven? And then after step number 2, then you simply look at them. And you say, could I take just a moment? You ought to reach in your pocket and pull out your testament, begin to open it, because you always expect a yes. Could I take just a moment to show you from the Bible? Step number 3. Could I take just a moment to show you from the Bible how you can know for sure you're going to heaven? Now, we're going to teach the rest of this in just a moment. It's very, very important what I give you to put on to step number 2. The golden key that goes with this first phrase. We want to put all of this together. But I want to give you take as long a break as you need to, but I want to give you just a couple of minutes break. Walk around a little bit, smile a little bit, just breathe deep a little bit, and then come back, get ready, push play, and let's go forward to the rest of this. Welcome back to this wonderful subject of winning people to Christ. We left off talking about the beginning of the 13-point plan. I want to review with you very, very briefly because you already have your notes on it. There are 13 points in 4 sections. Section number 1, cast the net right. You remember we gave you 3 questions. Question number 1, what is your church background? Give your testimony. Question number 2, if you should die right now, do you know for sure you go to heaven? Question number 3, could I take just a moment to show you how you can know for sure you're going to heaven? Now let's stop there for just a minute, and I want to give you what I call golden key number 1. Golden key number 1, then I want to talk about these 3 steps just briefly before we move to the second division. Golden key number 1 very simply is this: be folksy. Now don't ask me how to spell that word. If I had to spell it, I'd say it's spelled F-O-L-K-Z-Y. The Detroit Free Press spelled it this way. When Mr. Reagan was elected his first term and went to Germany, they said a folksy Reagan enchants the summit. And they spelled it, I believe, F-O-L-K-S-Y. Regardless of how you spell it, I want you to practice it. What does it mean to be folksy? It means to be friendly. It means to be down home. Collard greens, cornbread, etc., etc. For some of you that understand that kind of eating, I'm very simply trying to say, be friendly. You're not going to build an exciting church if you don't have a friendly church. You're not going to build a growing church if you don't have a friendly church. We're not going to get the job done in soul winning unless we learn to be friendly. Be folksy. Practice it. Learn it. Now, that's part of the character of a soul winner. Jump back with me to these 3 steps for just a minute. I already commented on step number 1. What is your church background? Always say something positive. Let me give you the 2 words every soul winner needs to put in your attitude vocabulary. Are you ready? Attitude vocabulary. 2 words. Word number 1, great. Word number 2, wonderful. Everything is great and wonderful. Practice it. You'll enjoy it. In everything in life. Attitude is a choice. So it is in this area. When somebody talks to you and they say, well, I was raised in a Mormon church. You look at them and say, a Mormon church? Well, that's a cult. That cult, those people are going to go to hell. You don't believe. Hey, wait a minute. You're not going to win them to Christ. Remember, people have to get saved to get better. They don't get better to get saved. You say, what am I possibly going to say positive? Well, think. When I deal with Mormons, somebody comes along. If you can't say anything positive, don't say anything. But I'll deal with somebody who says, I was raised in a Mormon church. And I'll say, that's that group that has that choir that tours and sings, isn't it? Say something. I deal with a Lutheran. When I was raised in a Lutheran church, hey, you guys got those beautiful red doors, have you not? You can say something. Don't criticize people. If you criticize their background, you're going to lose them. Now, step number 2, this is really important because you're qualifying your prospect. Step number 2, you look at him, you ask the question, if you should die right now, do you know for sure you go to heaven? Now, he's going to say one of several things, and you watch carefully. You're going to do this. You're going to smile, regardless. Remember, everything's positive. You're going to smile regardless of what he answers. And you're going to think 1 or 2 words. he is either lost or he's saved. Say it with me. He's either lost or he's saved. Now, you're going to smile. Okay, I'll look at him. I'll say, Joe, if you should die right now, I've just given him my testimony. How do you feel about that, Joe? If you should die right now, do you know for sure you'll go to heaven? Well, I think so. I'm going to smile. And I'm going to think lost to saved. Lost. But I'm going to say a positive thing. It's a good thing to think about being saved. Then I'm going to jump right to step number 3. See, it used to be that I thought you had to straighten him out. Somebody said, well, I think so. Well, I tell you, according to the Bible, you don't have to think. You can know. Let me tell you in 1 John, the word know is used so many times. Let me give you 6. Hey, you're not going to win that guy. We got to get the gospel to him. And he's got to get saved. That helps you to know he's unsaved. Well, Joe, if you should die right now, do you know for sure you go to heaven? He looks at you and says, well, I've been a Christian all my life. And you're going to say it's good you're thinking about Christians, but you think lost. And even, I don't have longer to stay here, any longer to stay on this point, but even if he looks at you and you say, if you should die right now, do you know for sure you go to heaven? And he says, yes. What are you going to do? You're not going to automatically say he's saved. You say, well, how long have you been saved, Joe? Tell me about it. Well, I got saved at a youth camp when I was 9 years old. And he gives an obvious testimony of being saved. Now the plan's over. You qualified your prospect. You're going to get up and shake his hand. God bless you, Joe. Man, I'm glad you're saved. That's wonderful. Then you're going to have a church visit and try to get him in the church. Get him back to visit again, whatever. All right? But you're going to find most of the people you deal with are unsaved, and you're going to move right to step number 3. So it's sort of like this. I look at him and say, Joe, if you should die right now, do you know for sure you go to heaven? He said, well, I'm just not 100% sure of it. And you're going to look at him and say, Joe, that's exactly like I was. May I do this? Can I take you just a minute to show you from the Bible how you can know for sure you're going to heaven? You take your testimony out and you look at him and he'll say, well, yes.